Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. You're listening to the Let's Talk About It show with me, Sharmeen Ziauddin, on Ramadan Radio London, 87.9 FM, online at ramadanradio.org and streaming on Facebook as well on Ramadan Radio London. For those of you who fasted yesterday, how was your first fast? I'm going to be honest, mine was difficult. I was having caffeine withdrawal symptoms, needed a bit of a lie down after my show yesterday, had a bit of trouble sleeping. So it was hard. So do let me know in the Facebook comments how your first fast is, how it went. And if it's today, your first fast, then wish you all the best and hope it goes well. So today we're going to talk about an issue close to my heart, and that is of parenting in the modern world in this era of social media and technology. So I'll start with a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which I think is quite important to recall. Each of you is a shepherd, and each of you is responsible for his flock. The ruler is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock. A man is the shepherd of his family and is responsible for his flock. A woman is the shepherd of her husband's household and is responsible for her flock. So, of course, whilst children are a blessing, they're also a huge responsibility, as we all know who are parents. So raising Muslim children in an era where they have exposure to all kinds of things at a touch of a button isn't easy. While social media certainly has its benefits, especially during lockdown in the last year, it's the root of many problems that youth face today. Bullying, seeing things they shouldn't, influencers influencing badly, mental health, drugs, some pretty gruesome stuff, not to mention young people leaving the fold of Islam. How can we as Muslim parents deal with some of these issues? Firstly, I think it's important to be aware of what's out there. You have to be well informed and keep abreast of what's going on. If you don't know what the latest app is or the latest PlayStation game is, if you have children who are, into that, then you will be in the dark. We as parents, I think, need to be one step ahead. Instead, we're often very behind with technology. And I also think there's a lot of pressure as a British Muslim parent. I don't know about anyone else, but when I was growing up, I didn't really do any extracurricular activities. But as British parents, we do a lot of extracurricular that everybody else does. So, we're doing sports, clubs, art, drama, instruments. But on top of that, we're ultimately raising Muslims. So it's all held together with the thread of Islam. So teaching them to pray and, of course, Quran lessons, lots of children go to madrasas or Saturday school. I feel like it's a lot. I mean, that's my honest opinion. The pressure of society and the pressure sometimes we have from family members, grandparents. On top of that, we've got added pressure of screen time, which I know is a point of contention for a lot of parents. It feels like a lot. We're being pulled in a lot of directions, and ultimately we bear this massive responsibility. In terms of the last year, and I know many parents have struggled, especially those with toddlers and very young children, not being able to go out. It's been hard. Some of the positives, though, of having my children at home for a lot of this past year in lockdown has been that I've got to know my kids. Really get to know them, have a laugh with them. It's a bit like, in the winter holidays when you're stuck at home, it's been long Christmas holidays. So you play games because it's so cold. No one goes anywhere, it gets dark so early. Watch lots of TV, watch lots of films. I think that's happened a lot over the last year, which has been nice. Like, for example, my 14-year-old son loves playing basketball in the garden. He's always asking me to play with him. And I'm really busy most of the time and I don't really want to do it. But then I just think, let's just spend 10, 15 minutes with him, even if it's freezing outside. And even if it means I'm going to be late doing whatever I'm doing, I just think it's more important because if I keep saying no, then he'll stop asking me to play with him. And I just think some things we just don't want to do, but we need to do. On the subject of raising children, Ali radiallahu anhu said, play with them for the first 7 years of their life, then teach them for the next 7 years, then advise them for the next 7 years after that. For me, that means that when they're 14, it means that most of your raw parenting skills have been done. from the age of about 14 to 21. It's about advising, not really telling off. Of course, you're still teaching things, but your style changes as you're getting older. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. I want to hear from all the parents listening. So, what is the hardest thing for you as a parent currently? Do leave a comment on the Facebook page. That's you can find that at Ramadan Radio London. Our guest today, who's been waiting very patiently, is a father of two teenagers, a boy aged 16 and a daughter aged 14, Shoab Iqbal, who's an ex-teacher and learning specialist. Welcome to the show, Shoab.
Pounding the pot for talking while I was on mute. Assalamu alaikum.
Rookie era. Walaikum assalam.
Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. How are you? How's it all going?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Really, really well. Thank you. It's it's going well. I can't complain. It's this lockdown I found quite difficult, if I'm honest with you. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. The days are getting longer. They're getting a little bit brighter. And inshallah, by the time Eid comes around, we should be well and truly into summer. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. How's
Mm.
your fasting going?
Alhamdulillah, we started yesterday, so second day now. And it's just getting into that routine, isn't it? It's totally different routine to your kind of normal day to day. But alhamdulillah, it's going well. I've been lucky enough to secure the last 3 weeks of Ramadan off this year. So I'm working the rest of this week, I'm working next week, and then I'm not going back till after Eid. So I'm so looking forward to that.
Excellent. Good stuff. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. So today we're
Yeah.
talking parenting.
Uh-huh.
Right. So, in terms of parenting, about the
Uh-huh.
last year, it's been difficult for a lot of parents. How have
Yeah.
you found it with your family? What have been the negatives and the positives about a parent when it comes to parenting and in lockdown?
Um, shall I tell you what the positives really is that kind where we're all around, we're all there, spending a lot of time together. I mean, to be fair, I even before this whole sort of pandemic lockdown, I tried to spend a lot of time with the kids anyway. So I've got two. I've got my son who's now 16. He's kind of first year A levels now, and my daughter Saliha, she's 14 now. So I just can't try and do lots of different stuff together. So you were saying earlier on about kind of, you know what, we now kind of do things that our parents, for example, didn't do in terms of leisure and activities and stuff like that. So look, for example, me and my son, we used to be members at the same gym. He's joined a different gym now, but we play cricket at the same cricket club. You know, we play football together. We do like here there bits and pieces. We go out for little bites to eat together and stuff as well. Randomly he said, "Dad, did you fancy just going to get a burger or something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, mate, no problem. Let's do it. Just
So you're
do it."
both foodies.
Oh, mate, absolutely. That's for a different show. That's for a different show, though. Um, and similarly with my daughter, you know, we'll do different activities together. We kind of I mean, obviously she's getting a little bit older now, but we used to do like little daddy-daughter dates where we just go like just me and her, go to the cinema, watch whatever you want to watch, go out for a bite to eat afterwards, whatever you want to do. And now she's getting to that kind of age now as well, where she'd be like, "Oh, you know what? You go out for a burger with Hassan Ali. I want you to take me out for a burger as well." I'm like, "Well, you only have to ask." Do you get what I'm saying? Um, so it's that's like I say, some of the positives. For me, I don't think there are negatives. There are only negatives if you want there to be negatives. The negatives really are not from me, it's them. They see too much of each other and they're like, I mean, they're like cat and dog. They're like cat and dog. And I was on a work call the other day. I mean, I've moved workspaces now, but I was in the living room, and from the living room you could see into the kitchen diner. And when I was on this work call, and they were just wrestling in the background, the pair of them, like headlocks and this and that going on. And my colleague that I'm talking to, she's like just like cracking up.
That's brilliant.
I'm like, what's wrong with you? She's like, um, she goes, you do realize what your kids are doing in the background. I look around and they were just like, I was just like, well, what can you do? So that's one thing, is the bickering and the arguing and all of that sort of stuff, right? I'm going to flip the whole thing around. Do you know what my kids turned around and said to me, Shamin? They turned around and said, Daddy, when are you going back to work? We're
Nice.
sick and tired of having you in the house.
Wow, that's harsh. I mean, but it's the reality. We have seen a lot of each other. And distance does make the heart grow fonder. So
Mm.
there's a reason why we spend time outside the house.
Honestly, they're like, Daddy, they're like, we go to school, you're at home. We come back from school, you're at home. When are you going back to the office? So it's as nice as it all is. I think everybody just needs, and I think it's really important. You need your you time, isn't it? You need that me time, whatever it is, whether it's doing crochet or playing football or cricket or golf or watching your favorite TV show where everybody else is away doing their own thing, watching your favorite drama, whatever it is, you need your you time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say that's that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to you need to look after yourself, and to be a happy parent, to be a good parent, you need to definitely give yourself some time. Let's bring the conversation to social media. Obviously the kids have been at home. That means they'll be on their phone more, they'll be on their iPad more, whatever. For me, and you've got a son, so I'm sure it's similar for you, it's video games, whether it's PlayStation or Xbox. There's so many devices for them to then there's Netflix, and then there's Sky, and then they've it's unlimited how many things they can actually, how many screens they have access to. So how have you coped with that? Has that been a contentious kind of point in your household? Because it has been in mine.
No, it hasn't. Um, I think, Alhamdulillah, up to now, Hassan Ali's managed his time very, very well. He's, I tell you, let's take it back a step, because it just makes it sound to the general public and the world listening in that my child is an absolute angel. For the record, no, he's not. So this changed just before last lockdown, right? So when was it? The Christmas before that. So that was 2019, December 2019, I think that was, wasn't it? So he did his GCSEs last year, or should have done his GCSEs last year. Now he did his mocks, and his grades in his mocks were quite indifferent. In some, he was getting like A stars, and in some subjects he was getting sort of C's and D's. And it was a case of, what's going on? And he's like, well, I only revised for the important subjects. So it's all kind of what was important, or what he deemed to be important. And I said, well, look, you put that much effort into these and you got that sort of grade. Imagine if you put the same sort of effort into everything. And that's where it sort of clicked for him. And what he did was, if you ever looked at my Outlook calendar, which organizes my day-to-day work life, it's multicolored, different blocks, different colors. Every minute of my day is structured. And that's what he did. That's what he made for himself. In that he had his gym time, in that he had his cricket training, in that he football, whatever it was, and he had what subjects he's doing at what times, and all the rest of it. Long story short, GCSEs were cancelled and everything went to pot. So, but within that, like I say, he then had his screen time as well. So within that, he was like, this is my PlayStation time. This is my time out. I'm not doing anything at this time. Over lockdown, when it was understood that there's not going to be any GCSEs, it all went to pot.
Yeah.
because there's no revision to do. There's nothing to aim for. So if you're invariably, you can't go out, and all you can physically do is be in front of the PlayStation all day.
Well, this is it. This is what I was getting at.
And now, if would I rather he's playing FIFA, or would I rather he's on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok? I at least know what's happening on FIFA.
Yeah,
It's a
100%.
football game,
Yeah.
right? TikTok, elements of it, now the billah, you see it, it's literally soft porn elements of it, right?
Yeah.
And
Actually, you're right. And sorry to interject, but
no, no, not at all. Go on.
TikTok, when I TikTok became a huge thing last year. I mean, it's been around for many years, but during the lockdown, it became a huge thing. And I my children had it on their phone. I allowed them to get it because, it was popular, and I thought, let me just go and see myself, let me download it myself, because this is what I was talking about earlier, is you need to know what's on there. I thought it was just about funny videos and food and whatnot, and when you open an account, they show you loads of stuff, like things that say a 12-year-old girl should not see. But like most social media apps, the more you watch stuff that you like, it tailors it towards that. But when you open an account, they show you exactly the kind of things that you mentioned, very inappropriate things. And I think you have to go on TikTok yourself to understand what it's all about.
I don't have it. And I've just going by hearsay. My cousins and stuff have got it. So I sort of take their steer on it sometimes in that respect. But look, my point is that there's the known and there's the unknown. And if you're in front of a PlayStation, then so be it. But then you're not going to be in that PlayStation all day, because we might be going down to because first lockdown last year was kind of this sort of time. The cricket club is now open. You can at least go down and do stuff, even though there's no games or anything. So we go down, we'll hit some balls, we'll do stuff. We got out of the house and we did stuff still, if that makes sense. But in terms of that screen time, yeah, you just got it's a difficult one, because it is the lesser of two evils. And that's what you got to weigh up, is what is the lesser of those two evils. Now, since then, alhamdulillah, since he's back to school, he's doing his first year of A levels, he's got his exams coming up again. He's slipped back into that whole structure thing now, where he's like, so the only time he'll be on the PlayStation is on the weekends. I follow their Instagram accounts. They weren't allowed to. They were like, honestly, and this is where, alhamdulillah, I'm really blessed. My kids turned around and said, Daddy, can I get Instagram? Hassan Ali, obviously, first. I said, no, you can't get it. 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 Not yet, not yet, not yet. And to be fair, he held off. He could have just made an account under an
Yeah.
email address, which I don't even know. He didn't do that. And he waited. And then I said, okay, not a problem. But only if I follow you and you follow me back. That's it. Great. And then it was the same thing with my daughter. She's like, oh, well, I can't go. I said, well, how old was Hassan Ali when he got his?
Yeah.
And you got to be fair. And she's like, oh, okay, fair play. So, and again, I follow them, they follow me, I comment on their stuff, they take the mick out of me when I post stuff on mine, all that sort of stuff. So it's look, long story short, it's about having a level of sense and sensibility, and just letting common sense prevail, to be fair. I think that's kind of where my steer would be.
I think there is an element of trust, of course. And I think when they're at that age, that although there's lots of issues relating to that age, the teenage years, but I think when they're a bit younger, when they're 7, 8, 9, it's a little bit harder to kind of, because they don't really understand why education is important, why they need to, they don't have that study sort of ethic like they do when they're a bit older, when they've got something to aim towards. So that age group is also quite a hard age group to kind of keep them off the screen. And like, for example, I've got an 8-year-old, so she's been asking me for about 2 years, when can I have a phone? And I've said to her, well, you can't till you start secondary school. But she keeps asking me every few months, and then she'll go on and on and on, and then after saying no multiple times, they don't let up. Very persistent children. So it's constantly saying no, which can be a bit tricky. How do you thing.
Can I
Yeah.
just come back? Trust is a big one.
Mm.
I think that's a massive one, and that's what a lot of traditionally, I think Asian parents from our sort of background, they don't do. They don't trust their kids because the thing is, and I'll give you an example, right? Um, Someone was telling me they don't have snacks in the house. They don't do crisps, chocolate, sweets. Da, 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 da. Now, I know for a fact that same child on their way to school, the first thing they do is stop into the sweet shop and stash up on crisps and chocolates and da, da, and all the rest of it. I'm using something which is actually nothing too serious, if that makes an example. My point is this: you don't know what your kids are doing when they're not in front of your eyes. And what we like to do is we'd like to think this is what they're doing, but in actual fact, what they might be doing is something totally different. And all we can do is guide them, like you say, empower them, give them that knowledge, and then we have to trust them. We have to. We have no choice. So so yeah, great. I resonate with that really, really strongly.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to trust them, but you've got to trust them after a certain time. Um, for anyone who's just joined us, by the way, you're listening to the Let's Talk About It show with me, Sharmeen Ziaddin, and I've got guest Shoab Iqbal today with me. We're live on 87.9 FM in London and also on ramadanradio.org. So let's talk about being a father. Like the role of being a father has changed, I would say, over the generations from what our fathers were, what was expected of them. I think fathers, there's a lot more expected of them nowadays than there
Mm,
was
mm,
before.
mhm.
How does your parenting differ from, you say, your fathers or that generation?
Oy. My parenting style is very relaxed. Some would say laissez-faire. I don't think it is laissez-faire. It's very relaxed, but I'm firm. I would say firm but fair at times. For example, like you said, that those multiple no's. Um, One thing I learned very, very quickly is as a parent, often what I see and hear is people laying down the gauntlet in terms of making threats. Oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to take your PlayStation away for a week. But they never do it. If you said you're going to do something or not going to do something, you have to follow through. Have to follow through. And that's where your children have to kind of understand that, you know what, if mum or dad has said this, then on the flip side of that, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You've heard that one before, right?
Yes, I have.
So yeah, and I'm sure many of your listeners have, and it's okay. What I'm trying to say by that is you can tell a child, but where we really learn is from concrete experience. Yeah. Now you can tell a child, don't touch that, it's hot. Don't touch that, it's hot. Don't touch that, it's hot. But you know what? There's certain times where you have to turn around and say, do you know what? Touch it for yourself and find out.
Yeah.
And then the child will touch it and say, Daddy, they will learn two things. One, you know what? Daddy was right. But they realized, you know what? This is actually hot and I ought not to touch that again.
That reminds
Um,
me of when my mum tells me a story about when I was and she was holding me and she was cooking. I was probably about 3 or something, 2 or 3. And I kept putting my hand near the hob and she kept saying, don't do
oh,
it, don't do it. And then she kept saying no, and I wouldn't listen. And then she let me touch the pan. And then I was like, apparently this happened.
yeah.
And she was like, see, and yes, that's exactly what you're saying. Sometimes they have to learn the hard way.
Yeah, yeah, it was more of a metaphor than anything else. To be
Yeah,
fair,
I
not
know,
that
I know,
I've
but it
that, that
actually
I've burnt
happened.
that I've burnt, that I've burned my children or anything.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Well, this
Um,
was like a long time ago.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I could imagine. So look, I think that sort of comes into it, and that's again where the trust comes in and the empowerment comes in, you know, and that because we're sometimes too overprotective of our children. You know, we'll go to Argos. I remember going to Argos and Hassan wanted to get Connect Four, and I was like, he was only 3 or 4. I was like, okay, it's educational, it's fine, let's get it. But I said on one condition, here's your money. How much is it? He goes, whatever it was, £8 or whatever it was. I goes, how much have I given you? He goes, £10. I said, how much change will you get? He's like, £2. I'm like, great, go and order it. No, I can't do it. Yes, you can. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Mum's there. Da, 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 da. So look, in the end, we had to really encourage him and give him the confidence to be able to go. But it was just that. And then he came back skipping, going, yay, I did it. I did it. You know, I had the confidence to go up there. I ordered it on my own. I gave them the money. I got the change back. And this is what I mean by empowerment. And sometimes what we do is pick as parents is the tendency is for us to kind of do things for them too much. Let them get it wrong. Let them get it wrong. Our biggest teacher is our last mistake, you know? So, and this is where many would say that my style of parenting is quite sort of controversial because it's quite contemporary and it's quite forward thinking at times. But in the flip side, I can be really traditional still, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to kind of move with the times in certain ways, and you have to adapt to the society you live in the sense that we are living in a new, different society to what we were raised in and what our parents were raised in. So you have to adapt, obviously. And I think that's a really good point of balancing traditional parenting and contemporary methods. I think that's really the way forward. In terms of now, so you've got teenagers, I've got one teen. Do you talk to your son, probably not your daughter, but do you talk to your son about embarrassing issues, you know, lots of things coming up, you know, growing up, especially as he's 16? Do you have those talks with him, or do you delegate that to your wife, or do you just not do
No, no, I don't. I'll tell you why. Is there's many things that we do talk about. There's many things that we do talk about. But do you know what? And I've told him, and I've told him, you know, we can talk about anything, all the rest of it. But there's other people in the family that he can have those conversations with, and I have got to have those conversations with him. So it's not like those conversations have not been had.
Right,
So I mean, I'm an only child. I don't have any brothers or sisters, but
right.
by the grace of God, I've got loads and loads of cousins. My, you know, my aunties, uncles, all the rest of it. Like I'm talking about first cousins, and he's very close with all of them. Although they're his judges, his
Yeah.
uncles, he's very close with all of them. And you know what? And where he kind of talks to them and this and that. I've what I've managed to do and is delegate it off in that sense and say, bro, has he spoken to you about this? It's like,
You've
nah.
outsourced basically, which is
Yeah, I've
great if you
out.
can do that.
Yeah, if you can do that, if you can do that. Um, if you don't have that luxury, then it's a case of just kind of look. Hassan Ali,
Sure.
it's really weird because my child, Hassan Ali, my first one, he's like the little brother that I never had. And Salia's like the little brother that I never had. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So we're
that's nice.
so so we're like quite close and quite broy in that respect. Do you get what I'm saying? And he's currently going through this crisis in his head where he's like, I don't want to call you daddy anymore because that sounds childish. Right? This is the crisis that he's going through, but he still wants to call me something. So we're like, what do I call you? Do you get what I'm saying? It's quite cute if you think about it. But look, my point is that we got a pretty good relation, and my mum, she sometimes sits there and said, "Oh, you know what? If in my time we spoke to our dad like that, do you know what?" Um, but like you say, times change, isn't it? Um, but yeah, look, it's a tough one because, and I tell you how I will. You know what? This is will be my closing gambit on this one. My mum, God bless her soul, she goes, "There's no sharam in Sharia." And what she means by that is she doesn't mean that there's no such thing as shame in Sharia. No, what she means is if Sharia allows you to discuss it, then we should not feel embarrassed to discuss it.
Well, that's a very forward-thinking position to have as a obviously mother. She's older, so that's very thought-provoking, and I think I would agree absolutely. I mean, I'm quite forward with my kids, and I think over this last year, I have kind of become friends with my son, and I'd like to think we're quite good mates. And I think that's very nice because it's special. It's a relationship you have to nurture as a mother
Mm,
with your son. I don't want to be that kind of like, I don't want him to be mummy's boy, but on the other hand, I want to have a good relationship with him. And it is constant nurturing and keeping up to date with what they're interested in. And yeah, talking about things, embarrassing things, awkward as they may be, but you got to do it. If you got to do it, you got to do it. And we don't have that luxury that you have with lots of
absolutely.
extended family. So I think me and my husband have to do that kind of work. But anyway,
Yeah.
so how
But
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 have you
but
been able
but
to
no one
see
had that chat with me
family?
full stop.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I think you're not alone in that. From our generation, our parents didn't talk to us about anything slightly sort of controversial or edgy or private. It wasn't done, was it, really? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
And I think that's a big
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. It's a bit. I think one of when it's just a bit lagging a little bit. I think one it's probably my internet connection. It's been a bit ropey of late, to be fair.
Okay. In terms of Islamic parenting, how do you, what sort of Islamic principles do you sort of ensure that your children have? I think there's a lag.
Yeah, there is a lag. There is a lag. I think have I got you back now? Though you were saying in terms of Islamic principles.
Yeah, well, what are the main things you have taught your kids and in terms of Islamic parenting?
Oh wow, that's a good question. To be fair, it's about being able to embrace those fundamentals of Islam, and particularly the denomination and the school of thought that we follow. To be fair, and making sure that those are instilled, embedded, and rationalized. So, we, for example, did many things that we just did because our parents did them, and their parents did them, and their parents did them. But it's a case of being able to turn around and saying, well, look, do you know what? This is the school of thought that we follow. We are Hanafis, for example. We follow more the Sufi school of thought, and this is why, and this is how, and being able to rationalize things through evidence. So I think that is the key principle, because getting that aqidah sorted out, um, and the foundations laid, and then that inshallah will set you up. That inshallah will set you up for the future.
Yeah, I think I don't know about anybody else, but in terms of how I was brought up and a lot of people of my generation, we were taught kind of fear of Allah, and it was more about doing things out of fear. And I know now a lot of Muslim parents talk about the love of Allah and focus on that aspect of Islam rather than fear. Of course, there's fear, but the love of Allah is kind of the things that we're focusing on, especially when our children are younger. And that hopefully will manifest as they grow older, and maybe putting more emphasis on the spiritual side, I think, is a good one, because obviously we do get bogged down with rituals, and um, obviously rituals are a big part of Islam, but I think a lot of us lack spirituality in terms of how we worship, and trying to put that into our children's hearts, I think, is really important. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. And I think that's something worth striving for as well, if we can. Any tips on that, Shoaib?
Any tips on that? Yeah, look, rationalize it, make sure they understand it, follow it, embrace it yourself. Don't just walk the walk and don't just talk the talk. You got to walk the talk. You got to do what you say. So, and you know what? He listens to music while he's working and stuff, for example. And sometimes you'll hear Bhangra tunes coming out of his room. Sometimes it'll be R&B. Sometimes it will be drum and bass. Sometimes it will be Gawalis. Sometimes it will be recitation of Quran. Sometimes it
Very
will be
eclectic
zikr.
taste in music.
Yeah, sometimes it will be zikr, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes zikr and stuff. So it's very, and that's it. And that for me is where it is. It's having that balance and giving them the choices and letting them find their own. But just with a push and a poke and a prod in the right sort of direction, because it's like, look, I think parenting is like, it's like if you've got a plant, and if you tie the plant up to like a little a stick, it's only going to grow in one direction.
Yeah,
And
that's
is it
a
your
good
direction?
metaphor.
You know, so you know, so that's the only direction it's going to grow in. So let them flourish, let them grow. But for that to happen, we have to um, empower them with knowledge, and we have to trust them and give them the space to be able to grow and flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the gardening metaphor is quite apt, because the children are like plants. The seed is planted, they grow, you water them, you feed them, and you hope that they grow into they blossom. So it's a good analogy, actually. In terms of fasting, how is fasting going? I mean, I know it's only just started. How is Ramadan going in your household? Do you obviously I'm sure you make a big deal of iftar, like most Muslim households do. But what about sahur? Do you, being a foodie, you get up, do you make food together? I mean, with children fasting, it does add a extra element of you can say excitement or pressure, or just a bit more work involved. What would you think? What would you say about that?
Hmm? To be fair, at the moment the kids are off, um, and they tend not to sleep between because me and Hassan Ali, we go to Taraweeh. Yesterday we all went. My wife and my daughter came as well. My daughter wasn't feeling well, and she's still not feeling well, to be honest with you. I think but she's fasting, and she doesn't want to break her fast. So when you come back from Taraweeh around 12 o'clock, whatever it is, they're not sleeping until Suhoor. I have to because I got work in the morning, and so does the missus. So invariably we come down at sort of 4 o'clock, and they're already having their suhoor. They've already made their cereal. They're quite sort of what's the word I'm looking for? They just kind
Self-sufficient.
of take care of themselves. Self-sufficient. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They're very self-sufficient in that regard. So they just crack on with it, and we come down, and then they're like, we sit down, and I'm a grumpy one. I'm a grumpy one at suhoor. If I've slept, I just want to come down, have my suhoor. And like even yesterday, my son was saying, "Oh, Daddy, you spoiled suhoor yesterday. You came down, you were grumpy, and like you just spoiled it for everyone." And I'm like, "Bro, I just want to come, eat, sleep, pray, and just go back to sleep again." And then when I'm off, then I'll be all right because I won't be sleeping in between either. And sometimes we make an event of it. We've been known to, as you know, we're all foodies. We'll go out, been known to go out for a burger for suhoor sometimes, or go out for a kebab, or do something. So yeah, suhoor is nice. Hassan Ali makes a really nice lassi, so we like to have a bit of lassi for suhoor. He does a really good lassi. So yeah, does that go some way to answering your
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody has different sort of traditions in their household, and I find because my children are 14 and 12, so they're just, they've only in the last few years started fasting, and I guess we're developing those traditions of what we have at sahur and what happens. But yeah, it's been quite subdued last 2 days. I think we're all really out of it and just not used to eating at that time. So it hasn't been the funnest, I must admit, but hopefully
Mm,
it'll ease up a little bit over the next few days.
inshallah.
So we're coming to the end of the show. So anything you want to add that we might not have mentioned? I mean, there's lots of things, obviously. This topic is so vast. Anything you want to add, please do.
Ah, of course. Of course. Do you know what? I just had a thought come to mind actually because someone was I remember being in the car with one of my friends and he said something to Hassan Ali and he says, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this." And my friend turned around and said, he said, "Shoaib, you're brainwashing your child." And my answer to that is, well, you're trying to brainwash him. Everyone is brainwashed. Everyone is brainwashed. Me, you, everyone is brainwashed to some degree. But what is the brainwashing that's happening? Does that make sense? So it's a case of if we remove the word brainwashing and use conditioning, what have we conditioned our children into doing? And what I think what we've got to think about sometimes is the aspirations that we have for our children, right? And that's another conversation in itself. What are their aspirations? Do the two resonate? Is there a connection between our aspirations and their aspirations? But let's put that to the side for a second. And this is where I think one of the biggest disparities is sometimes. How we condition our children is not conducive to achieving the expectations and the objectives that we have for our children in our own right mind. Yeah.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
want them to be for example, we want them to be a professional cricketer, but sometimes what we do is we actually take them to play golf or football instead, and we think the football training is going to help them to become a professional cricketer. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay.
And so that's the first thing I would say, and the second thing I would say is, do you know what? We've already touched on it, and just to kind of say it again, almost is let go, give them space, give them that space there's nothing wrong with let them make mistakes, but be there, not to tell them I told you so, as our parents sometimes did, but to say, well, look, okay, let's pick this apart. Let's just unpick this. And how do we stop that happening again? How do we learn from this and make it a positive experience?
Yeah, I think that's
Um,
really important actually. being there for them when they make mistakes, even though you're desperate to say, I told you so, but you can't. You got to keep it in. And that's one of the harder parts of parenting, is choosing your battles, which things you're gonna have an argument about, and what things you're gonna just let go. And you have to let a lot of things go, and a lot of things you need to not let go. So that's the part of the parenting journey.
Of course. And you got to be consistent. You got to be consistent in your approach. And that's when you find, though, when you smooth them over and help them through a situation, that's when they start coming to you. And that's when your daughter now might start coming to you, you know, and say, well, do you know what? I think my menstrual cycle has started. You know, that's when those sorts of conversations might start happening, when you start breaking down those barriers and stop being a parent and being more of a friend, but not just like for the sake of saying it, a friend, but in actual fact being there for them.
Yeah,
So
and that's really important in the teenage years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. So
thank you, Shoab. I think we're gonna have
you know, we put them on our laps and we feed them when they're little. You know, yeah, go on.
Sorry, there's a bit of lag, but I was just going to say, I think we've got to leave it there because we've run out of time. But no doubt there's a massive topic, and one that is changing all the time with new challenges.
No problem.
So we'll come back to it again. Thank you for joining me today. I'm just going to end with a verse from the Quran, which is, "O you who have believed, let not your wealth and your children divert you from remembrance of Allah. Your wealth," and there's another verse, "your wealth and your children are only a trial, whereas with Allah, with him is a great reward." And I think we can get very bogged down as parents, especially mothers with our children, obsessive in a lot of ways. I mean, it's natural in a way, especially for mothers, as you give your all to bring up a child. But I think it's good to remember this verse from time to time, because ultimately our lives shouldn't really revolve around our children. You know, that's not the ultimate goal, but yet they play a huge important part in our lives, and ultimately getting to a good place in the afterlife, to Jannah, inshallah. So I hope that's given everyone some food for thought. If you have anything to add, then do leave a comment on our Facebook page. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks again, Brother Shoaib, for coming on. Hopefully we'll talk about this again soon. Jazakallah khair, everybody, and thank you for listening to me, Sharmeen Ziaddin, on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. Till next time, that's tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.